I never thought my mind could turn against me. I believed that sanity was something solid, something you either had or didn't. I believed that if something felt wrong, it was wrong. If something hurt, it mattered. But what I learned slowly, painfully, is that the human mind can be bent without force, broken without visible wounds, and rewritten without you ever realizing it is happening. Gaslighting doesn't arrive as cruelty. It arrives as certainty. It arrives as confidence in someone else's version of reality. It arrives disguised as love, logic, and concern. He thought he understood his mind, but what he didn't know was that a resource existed that could help him rebuild his life. You'll find it in the description and comments. At the time, I didn't know what gaslighting was. I only knew that something inside me was slipping, that I was becoming a stranger to my own thoughts, and that the person I trusted most seemed increasingly convinced that I could not trust myself. At the beginning, everything felt normal, better than normal. I was told I was valued, understood, chosen. There was warmth, intensity, connection. And then, almost imperceptibly, the corrections began. That's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong. You're being dramatic. You're too sensitive. They were said softly, calmly, as if my confusion were a small, harmless misunderstanding. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I doubted myself. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe my emotions were exaggerating reality. And that is how gaslighting works, not by attacking your mind directly, but by inviting you to participate in its dismantling. You start editing your memories before anyone else does. You start apologizing for things you're not sure you did. You start questioning whether your feelings deserve to exist at all. The first clear example came during an argument I still replay in my mind. I confronted them about something they had said, something that had deeply hurt me. I remembered the words clearly, the tone, the moment. But they looked at me with calm certainty and said, "I never said that. You must be confused." And instead of trusting my memory, I searched their face for truth. I wanted peace more than I wanted reality, so I accepted their version. I told myself that maybe I had imagined it. That was the first crack. Because once you accept that your memory might be wrong, every thought becomes negotiable. If you cannot trust what you experience, what can you trust? Another example came in the form of emotional reversal. When I expressed pain, they became offended. When I asked for accountability, they became the victim. Suddenly, my hurt was cruelty. My boundaries were attacks. My need for clarity was labeled instability. And slowly, I learned that every emotional conversation would end the same way, with me apologizing for feeling something. That is the silent brutality of gaslighting. It doesn't scream. It erodes. It teaches you that your inner world is unreliable, that your emotional responses are flaws, that your perception is a liability. I began to monitor myself constantly. Before speaking, I asked, is this real or am I imagining it? Am I reacting reasonably or am I broken? Then came the rewriting of events. Entire conversations were denied. Promises were forgotten. Behaviors were reframed. If they were cold, it was because I was too demanding. If they lied, it was because I misunderstood. If they hurt me, it was because I was looking for problems. Reality became fluid. Truth became whatever protected their image. And I became a witness to my own confusion. I started keeping moments in my head like fragile evidence, replaying them at night, trying to anchor myself to something solid. But the more I tried to hold on to reality, the more it seemed to slip away. Isn't it terrifying how easily the mind can be convinced that it is the problem? Gaslighting doesn't only distort memories, it reshapes identity. I began to see myself through their narrative, unstable, emotional, difficult, irrational. My confidence faded. My voice softened, my instincts went silent. I stopped trusting my reactions. I stopped trusting my judgments. I even stopped trusting my pain. Anxiety became constant. I felt like I was walking through a world where the ground could disappear at any moment. And yet I stayed because gaslighting doesn't feel like abuse. It feels like self-doubt. It feels like trying harder. It feels like believing that if you could just fix yourself, everything would be okay. The breaking point didn't come with shouting. It came with emptiness. One night, after another conversation in which my reality had been denied, I sat alone and realized something terrifying. I no longer knew what I believed. My thoughts were no longer mine. They were filtered through their voice. Every memory came with a question mark. Every emotion came with guilt. I asked myself, when did I stop trusting my own mind? When did love begin to feel like psychological survival? In that moment, something inside me refused to disappear. A small, quiet awareness whispered, "This is not normal. This is not love. This is not who you are." That was when I began searching for answers, not to prove them wrong, but to understand myself. I typed words I had never said before. Why do I feel crazy in my relationship? Why do I doubt my own memory? Why do I feel anxious when I speak my truth? And that is when I found the term that changed everything: gaslighting. What is gaslighting? It is a form of psychological manipulation in which one person makes another question their perception of reality, their memory, their emotions, and ultimately their sanity. And suddenly, my experiences had a name: the denial, the reversal, the emotional invalidation, the rewriting of events, the constant self-doubt. These were not personal failures. They were patterns. Rebuilding after gaslighting is not instant. Leaving does not restore the mind overnight. The damage remains in the form of hesitation, anxiety, and fear of trusting your own thoughts. I had to relearn how to listen to myself, how to sit with my emotions without asking permission for them to exist, how to say, "This hurt me," without immediately preparing an apology. Healing meant separating my voice from the one that had overwritten it. It meant asking, what do I actually feel? What do I actually remember? What do I actually need? And slowly, piece by piece, my sense of self returned. I began to understand that the goal of gaslighting is not simply control. It is erasure. To erase your confidence. To erase your autonomy. To erase the version of you that questions, resists, and sees clearly. But once you recognize it, the spell begins to break. Awareness becomes power. Clarity becomes protection. And the mind that was once manipulated learns how to defend itself again. Looking back, the examples are painfully clear. Denying things that happened, minimizing emotional harm, shifting blame, rewriting history, presenting themselves as the victim, and slowly making me feel like I was the unstable one in every conflict. These are not misunderstandings. They are psychological strategies. And I share this story because somewhere someone is experiencing the same silent disorientation. Someone is wondering why they feel anxious all the time. Someone is apologizing for emotions they can't even explain. Someone is losing trust in their own mind. If that is you, know this: you are not broken. You are being manipulated. At the end of his journey, he discovered guidance in a resource that helped him face anxiety and rebuild his life. You can access it too. The link is in the description and comments. Healing from gaslighting is about reclaiming authorship over your reality. It is about choosing clarity over confusion, truth over comfort, self-respect over emotional captivity. The mind that was once doubted can become the mind that protects. The voice that was once silenced can become the warning for others. And in that transformation, something extraordinary happens. You stop questioning your existence, and you begin to live again. True freedom begins in the mind, and only then appears in life. If this story resonated with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and continue this journey with us as we uncover toxic minds and rebuild stronger ones together.